go. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for signing in here to our July meeting, or I'm sorry, our May meeting, jumping all the way through the middle of summer. We got a number of things on the agenda today, approving kind of normal business stuff, approving our member minutes from our last membership meeting. We're going to have a little discussion around one of the next steps for our NARP, which is why Stephen is joining us from DRCW to talk through a couple of things on a new project for that. Some updates around the TLWQS for chloride, our chloride reduction plan for the Lower Des Plaines Watershed Group. There's a new group forming for the Illinois River. So there was an introductory meeting held. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then just reviewing our outreach materials that mostly we shared last time. So we're kind of in the middle between seasons here. Our current member list, I don't think we've added any new members since the last meeting. So we'll move into approving minutes. I did notice that there was, I had started typing out my notes and I think I had skipped because I think I was looking to check the spelling on Kyle's last name, make sure I had it right. And I moved on to the next thing and I never went back to it. So I noticed that I had not filled in that part of it. So I have amended the minutes. And so if there's any other questions, otherwise if we get a motion to pass the minutes as amended. And if we could just have a raise of hands.
I can't get my hand to raise, Jennifer.
Okay,
but
Scott, I got you.
He makes the motion or seconds it.
All right, can I get one more? Either voice or raise of hand.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Allison. I'll launch our poll. Okay, thank you. Motion passed. All right, we're going to jump into the NARP discussion. So I'm going to give a little bit of background and have Stephen kind of fill in and answer any questions about the project. So within our special conditions language, we have the NARP language that specifically talks about phosphorus, but as part of sort of the first paragraph of the special condition about being a part of the watershed group, it talks about working together with other permittees to find the most cost-effective ways to remove dissolved oxygen and offensive condition impairments to the Lower Des Plaines watershed. So as part of the NARP, we are looking at both the phosphorus side of things as well as DO. And from looking at where a number of our impairments are, and then kind of and their relationship to where treatment plants are, addressing phosphorus alone is not going to fully address our dissolved oxygen impairments. And this is seen in the DuPage River system and Salt Creek. These things do go hand in hand in many cases, but by just making phosphorus reductions alone, we're likely not to fully address those dissolved oxygen impairments. And so to get a better handle on the impairments from DO and how DO functions within our streams, that's where we added expanded DO program in 2020. So when we moved to doing our TRIBs, we collected some of this data on the main stem, but specifically today we're talking about the tributary side of things. So we started the expanded DO program, putting out a probe for at least a week-long deployment to collect that continuous DO sample. We added nutrient parameters in addition to the normal things that we collect as part of our bioassessment chemistry sites. but we added some additional dissolved parameters and different components of phosphorus, collected both cystonic and benthic chlorophyll A samples in flow. And so we're really trying to start to build that data set to better understand how these things are working together in our streams. And at the same time in 2020, DRCW started adding those to their bioassessment, a number of their bioassessment sites. And in 2021, we continued it with the rest of our tribs, and the Lower DuPage also added on these sites. So we now are at least starting to build a decent set of data to start looking at these things a little bit more in depth. So Stephen hasn't seen exactly my slides here today, so flying a little blind on this, but basically, and Stephen, please step in here, I guess, kind of talking about how the IPS model currently looks at DO and why we need to have it look at DO in a different way.
Yeah, Jen, so yeah, as we didn't get a chance to compare slides. I had a few slides, but I can speak without them or with them as you like, which, I'm showing
Well,
the
if you got
data.
slides, we can go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah,
Stephen.
okay.
I will stop sharing mine.
Okay, can we
Yep, we're good.
see the slide? Okay, perfect. Yeah, and this is, as exciting stuff happening on some of our projects at the moment. So I was scrambling to pull this together into some sort of coherent way to give enough background just prior to the meeting there. So these slides seemed an easier way to keep me on target as opposed to wandering off and talking about the various bits and pieces that make this up. So to reiterate what Jennifer was saying is that one of the important aspects of the NARP, of course, is generating these thresholds for where the endpoint is, and we know there's that infamous language in the permits that say if you don't have a locally derived threshold, then there is the NSAC 0.1 out there. So obviously there's a lot of interest in generating what that endpoint would look like. Fortunately, we had started working on this back in 2007, 2008, not just for phosphorus, but we had also been looking at what the thresholds would look like for a range of environmental pollutants, and also how to rank them in terms of their impacts on aquatic life. In other words, we were interested in not just where this pollutant would start to kill fish and insects, but how would it rank in comparison to other pollutants? So we wanted to be working on the most important pollutant, not just picking one at random because it just happened to show up in a data set as a single hit. So we had worked with the Midwest Biodiversity Institute to use the bioassessment data, which of course was designed to collect data to answer this very question in that what we call paired data. And that's important because it means that we're not just collecting dissolved oxygen or chloride, we're collecting that, but at the same time, we're also collecting the aquatic organisms. So we're looking at those IBI figures for fish and macroinvertebrates. And so having that paired data allows us to do a lot of statistical analysis about what is driving aquatic life in the watersheds. So this is the data set that we originally ran this process back in 2012, and then we had the 2015 permit issued that allowed us to spend money on funding the findings of that study. In other words, that was taking out a series of small dams, etc. We're still working on that currently. But in 2019, we started to rerun a update of this. And back in the 2015, we had not been able to find a good statistical link with phosphorus. We just couldn't establish a relationship. And I'm not going to reiterate why that is. I think everyone on the line is probably pretty familiar already with the problems with trying to set a link up with phosphorus to aquatic organisms. However, this new data set was a much larger effort. The previous one was based only on DRSCW data, and I think there was Lower DuPage data in it as well. This new set includes, as you can see here on the map, includes data from Lake County. It also contains data from the Illinois EPA, where we got 20 years of data from them along with sample sites, and that was also all paired. So, we ended up with about over 400 sites going into this data set. And once again, all paired, which allowed us then to carry out this, the statistical analysis, though I'm not ashamed to tell you that at this point, I have a background in statistics, but these newer statistical models is not working within a day-to-day basis where the previous iteration I worked on it, but this one I really left it up to the professionals. So Ed Rankin at MBI is the one who really did this analysis. So coming out of that, of course, we did this time around with the larger data set, and then also the use of these, we developed this sensitive species IBI. We did come up with thresholds for phosphorus. It was a pretty strong statistical correlation, actually, and that sensitive species were species that we find that either that had a pretty linear relationship with phosphorus concentration. So as it increased, these species fell away. As it decreased, these species were found more and more commonly at the sites. And that IBI then also had a good relationship with the general use IBI, because once again, we're not looking to create perfect rivers here. We're looking to create healthy urban streams. And so we're looking at the general use category, which is the category under Illinois state law that these streams have to hit. And as you can see there at the top line here, you can see in the general use category, we ended up with a threshold of 0.11 to 0.28. Now, to be clear, that is a phosphorus, that's a range of phosphorus concentrations. And it doesn't say anything about algae. It doesn't say anything about dissolved oxygen, though we would speculate, of course, that they're baked into that relationship, or those are the vectors that phosphorus often most commonly used to impact aquatic life. So these types of tables were generated for all kinds of pollutants, chloride, ammonia, nitrogen, metals, and such, but also for environmental factors such as the percentage of cobble on the bottom of a stream, the sinuosity of a river, buffer width, that kind of thing. We also then ranked these various pollutants. You can see here the list of pollutants, or was say environmental stressors that we looked at, and these were then ranked according to their strength of the correlation with aquatic life. So all of these things played a role in explaining aquatic life. As they approach zero here, you can see impervious land use nearly as a perfect score of explaining the presence or absence of aquatic organisms. So stress two things here. One is that the phosphorus concentration did not explain, or we didn't look at dissolved oxygen, and the other one is that phosphorus is an imperfect guide to dissolved oxygen. So we're often looking TMDLs and such of manipulating total phosphorus in order to try to affect the DO regime. So as part of our NARP, we have a process that is looking at this, and this is a model output for the East Branch of the DuPage River. The green icons across the top of the graph are our wastewater treatment facilities. The red line that you can see there, the red dotted line, is what we're called the threshold here. So that's what IPS identified, the 0.28. That's the upper range of that threshold. And what we're trying to do here is, drop phosphorus below that line. Once again, it's an empirical observation. Doesn't go into how that affects algae, how that affects DO or something. It was just, there's a very good correlation between phosphorus in this threshold and sites that are meeting the aquatic, the general use aquatic life goal. And you can see here, we ran a number of scenarios. The one, of course, that we were principally interested in is this blue line here, which is approximately the 0.28. We're calculated if we're running a plant at 0.35 as a permit limit, then it would be operating with a margin of safety at about 0.28. But we also looked at, you can see here at the green line, and we totally eliminated phosphorus from the from effluent. So that's where we maintain the flow from the plants, but we eliminate phosphorus completely. And you can see here that it, it drops phosphorus, it drops it down to around, looks like about 1, or sorry, 0.1 in the river system. And that also included, because when we look at the next graph, it's important to remember we eliminated nitrogen, phosphorus, and CBOD in this model run. So this is what dissolved oxygen looks for that river system. And I want you to look at the green line here, which is the total elimination of those pollutants. And in fact, we can see that in fact, we still have the green line, gets very close to 5 here at the upstream area, about mile, it's river kilometer, actually river kilometer 35. You see here, we are still breaking the 5 milligrams per liter state standard at river mile or river kilometer 30, and that we're getting close to breaking it again. Well, green, but it still dips down at river mile 6. And the reason that this is important is that, of course, dissolved oxygen, it's not just a function of phosphorus. And obviously, this is a level of treatment that that's just unimaginable. We kind of did it to bookend the study and give us something to think about how sensitive these systems were to our manipulation of the phosphorus regime. So it's been clear for us for a while. I mean, we already knew this from previous model runs, et cetera, but it was clear to us that we were going to have to take a closer look at dissolved oxygen as part of our NARP. If we're going to get these streams into general use, we need to think about, what is a DO regime in a urban stream that is meeting the general use standard, again, close to general use standard, what would that look like? And by that I mean is that in the IPS model, where dissolved oxygen is used, it is a discrete sample. So this paired data set that I mentioned earlier, we have, we'll go out sometime of the day, we're running our bioassessment, collecting our chemistry data, and we will take a instantaneous grab of dissolved oxygen. Unfortunately, dissolved oxygen, all pollutants, I guess, do behave some ways like this, but dissolved oxygen is much more predictably so. It has this this diol or this diurnal cycle that we can see here. I think we'll all be familiar with that. Where dissolved oxygen typically very low in the morning, as the sun comes up, macrophytes and algae, benthic cystonic, start to release oxygen in the water, and the oxygen level climbs. You can see here we go up our ascending limb on our roller coaster here, and then it peaks at point in the day when the sun starts to move away, and then it starts to descend again as the algae starts to take up oxygen and release carbon dioxide. And of course, you can also see this in the pH cycle in the riverway. So nearly all of our dissolved oxygen information is these instantaneous grabs, and nearly all the DO analysis that we get in terms of our standards or our analysis on how it affects aquatic life is based around this, where I've got this 620 hours here. That's just the way the probe was set up. Doesn't mean it was actually the lowest point in the morning. It's just the probe was not collecting on the hour. For some reason, it was collecting at 6:20, 20 minutes after the hour, and that's where it hit its, it hit its lowest point. So somewhere around there, it's getting to its lowest point, and that tends to be how the standards are written, etc. And TMDLs are developed. However, there's a lot of other things going on here. For example, is a maximum of 12, 13 here, is that impactful on aquatic life? A lot of biologists think so. They think that a cycle where we're traveling, 9 milligrams per liter during the day is impactful on aquatic life, and there's papers coming out showing this. Just none of our standards show it. So I don't want to say that I'm not interested in the minimums. Of course, they're very important, but there's other parts of the DO cycle or the DO regime that we need to understand. And we couldn't develop in the original IPS because we didn't have enough paired data for it at that time. We only had this instantaneous grab data. So we're in the process of signing a contract with the Midwest Biodiversity Institute to develop the IPS for paired data. because we have, during the last couple of years, we've actually accumulated quite a bit more of it. Jennifer had mentioned the expanded DO study, where we put the sondes out for a number of days. That was coincided with the collection of biological data, which wasn't an accident. We have been planning that this analysis was nearly certainly going to be necessary. The IEPA also has some continuous DO data that we've requested and they've given to us. So that would also be expanded at the sites. And of course, we have some of our own sites where in the long term, running the DO program for about 15 years, that we have, it doesn't match completely our biological sites, but it matches some of them. So between the expanded DO study, which was based around our bioassessment monitoring, the IEPA data, and then the ones where coincidentally they cross over or they coincide, we think we have enough data in order to run the IPS analysis for the DO regime. So it would look at, it would examine the minimums. And once again, we're not suggesting this is any kind of a challenge to the state DO standard, but I think we do need to have a better understanding of how important those minimums are, just given how difficult it's going to be to hit the DO standard. And that it's talking, that allows us to talk intelligently and in a data-driven way with our environmental partners and the regulators, but also which other parts of these DO regimes are important to aquatic life. How much, is there some frequency of minimums that are more important to aquatic life than just hitting a minimum? Perhaps a minimum on, say, 2 days a week is not important, but if you get 3, 4, perhaps that is that's much more impactful. The depth of these cycles, how much deviation there is from the low point to the high point, et cetera, that kind of thing. So that's what will be covered in this this contract. This is the contract that we're currently looking at going, and I've stripped it down, but I did leave in a lot of the data analysis, which is the large part of the study. So you can see there that we're looking at statistical summaries of, DO relationship with cystonic and benthic algae in our waterways, as well as sort of the breakout of all of these DO figures, max, min, medians, median, swings, and of course, just given the quantity of DO data that we have with these continuous data sets going back 15 years, there's an endless amount of statistical analysis that can be done to try to understand it. I'm glad someone's enjoying it. So Jen, I hope that covered what
Yes.
what you wanted me to talk about, but I'm open to any questions or any clarifications in any part of this that I can offer.
Yeah, so I will go back to my screen. You want to go ahead and stop sharing?
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I had kind of the same list, just a little bit shorter summarized that last screen that Stephen had. And really, so definitely any questions for Stephen about what the project will accomplish, but just to kind of give some background on, so I'd like to request funding from the group to help co-fund this part of the project. And for some background on sort of, like Stephen said, DRCW had started the IPS modeling back in 07, 08. Things got updated with a much wider breadth of data in kind of that 2018, 2019 timeframe. And at that point, the funding of that project, which was, by the time it was done, somewhere around 120,000, if I'm correct on that, Stephen.
Yep.
And that was split more or less half and half with DRCW and Lower DuPage, and then a small chunk of funds for some additional work that needed to be done that came in through the Upper Des Plaines Watershed group at the time, since we were able to utilize data from their part of the watershed as well. So basically, the Lower Des Plaines Watershed group is benefiting from all of that work as we're able to utilize the IPS model, and particularly that phosphorus target, and provide kind of a defensible target for our NARP as the way that IPS, because of all the data that it has incorporated into it across northeastern Illinois, it's very applicable to our tributaries. So we had budgeted in 2019 $30,000 for this type of work. I think we had labeled it as IPS projects, IPS related projects. And so I'm requesting $25,000 towards this project. DRCW will fund the remaining portion of it jointly with Lower DuPage contributes funds for things related to the NARP to DRCW, and DRCW is putting together the NARP for the whole DuPage River system. So still somewhat co-funding in there. So if there's any questions about this or any of the background, any of the stuff Stephen had, please just unmute yourself, ask questions.
Yeah, and I apologize, the presentation not quite as coherent as I would like. We had a project kind of issue yesterday, and I've been working since like 6:30 this morning. I've been working on bits of it. So
yeah, that's why I threw in a couple of slides here just in case, because I knew you were working on some of the things, but appreciate what you were able to pull together.
Yeah, it's all very exciting.
If there's any questions either about the project, about the funding component. Stephen, what's the sort of time frame? How long do Chris and Ed think it'll take to complete the project?
So I am hoping to have something by, so we're going into June now. I'm hoping that 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they've already been working on bits and pieces of this because we've needed some of it. And then at some point it's like, yeah, we needed a contract to just do it, because I was kind of adding bits into we have a general services agreement. And,
right.
You know, I say, oh, we don't know this, look at that. And at some point I was like, we just need to really face into this problem and just get this all documented. And I should point out, of course, you know, that it was this analysis that allowed us to get that 2015 permit. You know, that
right.
really give the data underpinnings to making those arguments that phosphorus, lowering of phosphorus in the waterways, there was no evidence at that point that was going to have an impact on aquatic life. And certainly I would still point out, given the concentrations that they were asking for, I'm not talking about load reduction strategy, I'm talking about impacts on our local aquatic organisms, it wouldn't have had an impact. Or at least one that I don't think would be demonstrable. So, you know, we were able to point out that there were other cheaper items that we could do that were definitely going to have a positive impact, and that was accepted. And indeed, it's been accepted in the second round here, where I think we've had like 5 members who are now working towards their 1 milligram per liter, but the rest of the membership is still funding the watershed, the implementation of the second tier of projects for the watershed plan. And that all came out of this IPS tool. The physical, it really, the first iteration of it really pushed up the physical projects as being the main issues. This newer version has, as I said, it has identified phosphorus as a stressor, which works because we were definitely going to have to do something on phosphorus anyway. But I think it does have, you know, there is definitely a benefit to having something you feel is a robust endpoint that you know you feel is going to actually move the needle on aquatic life in the waterways.
Right. Yeah, and as part of the reports that we will receive from our bioassessments for lower Des Plaines, which we should hopefully see some drafts early summer here. I've been supplying them with information to pull stuff together, but as part of the reports, particularly for Hickory Creek and the other tributaries, MBI will be utilizing and incorporating all of our data into the IPS model, and we'll have outputs from the model as part of our reporting. All right. If there are no questions, what I would like to request would be allocating $25,000 to co-fund the O study for the IPS project. Like I said, it'll be a contract the DRCW will let with MBI, and then we'll will fund up to $25,000 to that project. So if there's no questions on that, if there's anybody who would be willing to make a motion.
Sounds worthwhile to me. I'll make a motion to approve that. This is Eric at Romeoville.
Okay,
I'll second it.
and I'm sorry, who was that? Dan?
Dustin.
Dustin, sorry. Okay. We'll launch the poll. Okay, we had 9 yeses, 0 nos, and 4 abstains. So the motion passed. I'll make that 10 yeses. All right, thank you very much. And we'll have Stephen back at a future meeting to talk about how the project moves forward and the results out of it.
Well, yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for your time.
Yep, thanks, Stephen. Okay. All right, so we'll move into some updates around the TLWQS for chloride. We've sent some information out on this, but the US EPA did approve the request from Illinois EPA for the chloride variance, or for TLWQS for chloride. Their approval came out almost 2 weeks ago now on May 13th. And so that really is kind of what starts the clock ticking on all of the deadlines that are within the TLWQS. So the thing we're waiting for right now is to see the final permits that IEPA is going to send out. We haven't heard anything specifically from them. So I know when they sent out the drafts, we had asked, Hannah Miller and I had asked to get a copy of those as well when they came out. So if anybody happens to receive their permit from IEPA on that, if you don't mind passing it on, so we can kind of stay on top of exactly what's in it. We don't really expect many changes from the drafts that went out. When we had a discussion with IEPA, they were basically taking language right out of the order from the Illinois Pollution Control Board. And we're not necessarily really interested in making any changes to that language because it had already gone through public comment and all that. And I'm not exactly sure if they're going to put these permits out for a public comment period. We haven't heard that either. So we're just kind of waiting for those next steps from Illinois EPA. But I know their intention had been to get permits out very soon after IEP or US EPA approved it. Because like I said, the clock started ticking from May 13th, not when you receive your permit from IEPA. So some of the kind of key timelines in here, one of the first things that need to be done is developing that pollutant minimization plan and that'll be, a unique plan for each of the petitioners, each of the permittees. And it's going to really be your planning document for the first 5-year term. So the overall term is 15 years for the TLWQS. It's broken up into 5-year chunks, and we'll do a reevaluation at the last year of each 5-year chunk. So your pollutant minimization plan really is your plan about how you're going to make changes looking at this next 5-year period. All of your annual reporting will be tied back to this plan. So if when you write your plan and you say you're going to do these things in year 3, and year 3 comes along, and at the end of that year, you need to report on, whether you accomplished those things, and if you didn't, why you didn't, and then what are your plans for the next year. So this really will be, planning document with milestones. We do have a template that had gone out through the chloride committee, as well as the entities through the cause chloride work group. And I think we're pretty much in a very final draft form. We're just waiting for that final permit to come out to see if there are any adjustments that need to be made. But as we've presented the template to talk with many people and shared it with IEPA, everybody seems to be pretty comfortable with the way it's set up. It really does take, like, we've pre-filled in sections of it, particularly around like the introduction and background information. So you pretty much just stick your name in that paragraph. Components around like the monitoring that's being done, because that's going to be completed by MWRD, and the data that we're collecting with the USGS gauge. We've got pre-filled that part out, and just leave space if you're doing any of your own data collection, you can fill that in. And then it's really meant to reference your snow and ice plan. So if there are BMPs that you're already implementing as part of your program, you fill out your ready implementing it, a short description, and then refer back to your snow and ice plan. And so the difference between these two is that your snow and ice plan should reflect your current operations. It should be up to date if you're going to use it as a reference, but it's your current operations, and the PMP is your planning document about how you're going to achieve the various BMPs. So in table 4, there's all of the BMPs listed that have to be implemented within the first 12 months. So by next May, all of those items need to be implemented. There are a number of them that the BMP, what you need to have implemented in 12 months is a plan for like how you are going to utilize pavement and weather conditions, pavement temperatures and weather conditions to vary your application rates. So if you're not currently doing that already, what you need in that first 12 months is a plan about how you're going to take the pavement temperature data that you're collecting, weather forecasting, and then create an application rate system that's varied based on that information. So there's a number of items like that where you're putting together a plan about how you're going to get somewhere. Calibration and staff training all need to be completed by November 30th. So calibration of all of your equipment and all of your staff who handle salt, that can be completed through various types of training. So whether you attend the winter workshops that we're putting on in September and October, internal training that you're doing about your particular practices, there's a number of ways to achieve that annual training component. And then as far as we understand, the first annual report will be due in July of 2023. So July of next year, covering the coming winter that we have, the 22 to 23 winter. We had requests from both folks on the chloride committee and through the cause to put together a template for that, for the annual reports. Really the more consistent we can have those reports come in, the easier it'll be when we have to put together status reports for the whole watershed. So we'll be working on that draft, and Hannah and I hope to have something by likely by early fall, so that people can review it and make sure that they have kind of everything in place this coming winter to be prepared to fill out that annual report next year. So last time I talked about the mentoring sessions that we're going to be coordinating with the Chicago Area Waterway Chloride Work Group. So we had a list of topics, which I included here again, of some of the things that we've heard requests from the group. We did hold our first round of mentoring sessions on sort of the TLWQS basics. We held one in Joliet, Orland Park, Homewood, Evanston. And this was, Hannah and I did these together. And then we also held one specifically for the Cook County DOT and for the city of Chicago. If folks missed those and would like to sit through presentation again, people reach out to me, we can set up another date if needed, or I can go through some things specifically, with organizations. We're happy to come through and talk through all of the requirements in there and how to go through this. All the petitioners. Oh, the other part of that is kind of sharing. So the purpose of these sharing knowledge and experience between agencies. There's two areas where this really helps. One, the obvious of just sharing that knowledge. But the second is that there is specific language within the order that talks about the obvious differences in resources available between larger entities and smaller entities, and that kind of as part of our evaluation and looking at where kind of hurdles are in implementing BMPs. It does talk about the potential of determining whether or not larger entities need to be potentially financially supporting smaller entities to help them achieve their BMPs. And it includes both, sharing of information and sharing of resources and then the financial side of it. So participating in these mentoring sessions really is a way to help share that knowledge and resources with various entities across the board. And this is a way that we can show that we are doing that. So particularly as we start getting into the more kind of technical sides of things like calibration or liquids or application rates, that information really is coming from you guys as public works and folks who are doing these practices. So we will be looking to you guys to help host and lead these sessions, because really as mentoring sessions, they are meant to be sort of peer-to-peer. So beyond the one talking about, developing your PMP, where that would be Hannah and I going through those things, the rest of the topics really would be coming from the permittees sharing with other permittees. So we will definitely be reaching out to folks, and your participation in these is a way for us to, like I said, meet the kind of, hopefully the way that by sharing information and helping other entities along rather than having to actually provide funds from larger agencies to smaller agencies. So this is definitely an area where having your participation in this is going to be really important. I don't know if anybody has any questions at all. Comments, like I will get the draft, or hopefully we'll just end up with the final, but we'll have the draft PMP. And we also had some documentation templates that we put together and get those up on the chloride committee page on the website for folks. But any other questions from anyone? And obviously, if you have questions after this, please just email me, and so we're happy to come out and meet with folks and talk through the requirements if needed.
Hi, Jennifer. This is Nikki Schaefer. I was
Yeah.
wondering if maybe I missed it when you mentioned the PMPs, and you just mentioned it now that you're going to put the template for the PMP on the website. Is
Yeah.
that going to be when? When do you think that will
Um,
be available?
Likely it'll be next week because Leah is out of town and she's the one who can get it up on our website. We did actually get it up onto the cause website. She was able to get that done before she left, but I will make sure that we have those up. And I can also email them out to folks as well, if you want to just send me an email. But we will get those posted up there. Any other questions?
I guess I do on the chloride mentoring sessions. So you had mentioned that if maybe a town or a municipality wasn't able to participate in the ones that were held, is that something where they can reach out to you and see if there's several people that you want to lump together, or is it just a case-by-case basis to maybe go over some of these things with each individual municipality?
Yeah, I mean, if there are a couple of different communities who, weren't able to make it, we can definitely set up a group one. If there's only one or two, we can go through the presentation that we had. Well, actually, when I have Leah get the PMPs up on the website, I'll also have her put the slides that we used as well. But yeah, I'm happy to come and sit down with folks and go over details if needed. definitely want to set folks up for success.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Mhm. All right. So I've been sending these out with pretty much everything I send out, but just sort of save the date on the workshops that we have coming up this fall. They'll be presented again by Fortin Consulting. We have 5 road dates and 2 parking lots and sidewalk dates, set up the same way as last year, where you register for a particular day and you get a link for that day, and you can share that link with as many of your employees as you would like to get trained. But basically you just need 1 registration per day that you want to attend. So if you want to split your staff up across 2 days, then you just need to register twice. You don't need to register for individual people. When you do register, we will send a follow-up email and just try to get a list of folks who did participate so we can track that on our end as far as numbers go. But definitely, talk within your agency, because I know we had a couple last year where people from different departments signed up for the same days, and you really don't need to do that. We will have registration open, I think, late July, early August is the plan. All the registration will go through saltsmart.org like last year, so just through Eventbrite. So if there are any questions, let me know. But like I said, I'll keep sending these out as reminders. We would really like to get participation from all of our agencies in this very low cost way to get staff trained. So somewhat hand in hand with the chloride TLWQS, which is really focused on just a portion of our watershed, pretty much the Will County, from the Will County boundary down on the lower displays, is included in the TLWQS. So the upper portion of our service area is not part of the TLWQS. And one of the ways this sort of got started was a request from MWRD, because they have some specific requirements in their MPDS permit for their Curie plant around chlorides. And so they were going to need to do some sort of a chloride reduction plan, particularly for the communities that they serve. And so we had some discussions last year about working on this together. So we developed a Lower Des Plaines watershed chloride reduction plan. And so it really is geared towards the non-TLWQS portion of the Des Plaines watershed. Unlike the TLWQS, this is really just a guidance document. There are no requirements in here. There's no deadlines in here. It really is meant to be kind of a reference, has recommendations, really with the goal of as much chloride reduction as we can get. And so the more, one of the other benefits in this is that the more communities and entities that we can have participating in chloride reduction and improving their programs, it benefits all of those entities that are a part of the chloride TLWQS. I did share this through our chloride committee. We used information from various snow and ice plans that were submitted as part of the salt use survey that we did last year. So kind of components of the plan, just looking at, sort of introducing what the chloride issues are, looking at how to do inventorying the type of chlorides that you have within your community. So whether that's for everybody, it's winter de-icing practices, but then depending on where you're at, whether or not you're using well water and have water softening, whether at residential or municipal levels, and just other sources of chlorides from fertilizer use or dust suppressants, things like that. So just kind of outlining that, kind of step one is to look at where chlorides are coming from within your area. Looking at it's really focused on winter maintenance BMPs. Again, kind of picking out pieces from those other, from snow and ice plans, from communities within the watershed, looking at what kind of training should be done about record keeping, how you're storing all of your materials, the types of materials you're using. We don't get into prescribing rates, but more of talking about the need to look at your application rates and utilize information, pavement temperature and weather conditions and that to adjust your application rates based on that information. The importance of pavement temperature, weather forecasting, introducing liquids, talking about calibration, and then evaluation. So really that sort of after storm events and after the season, how to utilize the documentation that you're keeping throughout the storms and throughout the winter and using that to evaluate your program. And then we went through kind of really talk about the importance of a good snow and ice plan and provided an outline of sort of the different components that should be included in the snow and ice plan. Again, not that it has to be in this order or these specific, titles or anything, but these are the types of information that should be in your snow and ice plan. Again, based off of examples that we have from across the watershed. And then we have a section on education and outreach. So talking about all the materials and the importance of education outreach and the materials that we have available through the Lower Des Plaines Watershed Group. So kind of really keying in on the benefits of BMPs, the idea that these BMPs are really an industry standard. We're not compromising public safety to implement these BMPs. Really the stuff that we're talking, a lot of the things that we talk about within the chloride variants, this document just doesn't have. It doesn't have the teeth to it. It's more guidance and recommendations. And the part where this does potentially play a role is that there is language within the MS4 permits that talks about that if you're in a watershed that has that is focusing on chloride reduction efforts, that you have to participate. It's very broad, exactly what participate means, but this at least helps to start give some guidance and open up discussion on that. So if there are any questions about this, go ahead, just unmute yourself if you do have any questions. But if we don't have questions, I would like to, I did, the whole copy of it went out in the meeting packet for any review. But if there's no questions, I would like to put this up for a vote to formally adopt our chloride reduction plan, and we'll get it up on our website as such. Okay, any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the chloride reduction plan?
Motion by Dolezal.
Second? Don't all jump in at once.
I would if I could, but I'm not able to.
Okay, no problem, Nikki.
Ditto.
Yeah, I'll second it, Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Allison. Okay, we got 8 yeses and 2 abstains. So our motion passed. Anybody else gonna vote? Got 11. All right, thank you. All right, so. So in May, earlier in May, IAWA had a call kind of talking a little bit about this watershed study group. And then there was the formal sort of kickoff meeting that was held last week. And there's been a lot of talk for quite some time about sort of a super NARP for the Illinois River. They don't really know exactly the direction this is going to go in yet, other than kind of really looking at all of the things that have gone on study-wise in the Illinois River, which there's been a lot of work over the last 20, 25 years. Some of the current stuff that's going on, particularly, what USGS is working on in the Illinois River Basin with their new monitoring program, and to, look at some of the rather pertinent issues, particularly around the HABs, the harmful algal blooms that they're seeing upstream of Peoria, and looking at making recommendations on phosphorus reductions. So at this point, it doesn't sound necessarily like it's going to be a NARP in the same sense of the NARPs that we are doing, but that's definitely still sort of out there. The initial coordination right now is being funded by Illinois EPA, but there was a lot of questions on the call about how the rest of this gets funded, particularly in light of all the work and commitment and funding that has gone on in the NARP development, and monitoring things that the groups like our group and the RCW, Lower Page, the Upper Des Plaines, the Fox River Study Group, all these groups that have been working on these issues for the last Fox River Study Group, it's going on 20 years. DRCW is going on 17, 18 years. So a lot of work that's been going on up here, definitely to make sure that whatever this group does doesn't impact or negate any of the work that these groups up here are doing. So a lot of the presentation was sort of where what studies have been done in the past, kind of newer monitoring going on now, and then some discussion about what the group is thinking about doing. So they're trying to plan an in-person meeting at Starbrook in July. When we get more information on that, I'll share it. I'm planning on attending that meeting, mostly to really just sort of keep an eye on what they are looking at doing, again, to make sure it doesn't impact the work that we've been doing here. I don't know if anybody else, I think Steve may have been in on the meeting. I'm not sure if anybody else was, if there's anything else, anyone that was on that call last week that might want to add anything. All right. So our last meeting was at the end of March, and I think shortly after the close of that meeting, I got all of these reports out. So the special condition annual report we submit directly to IEPA on behalf of all of the agency members. We have a list of all of the permits that report applies to, so the first page of that report. So it was submitted to IEPA. It is posted. I think I had sent a link out right after that, once we got it posted on the website. So it is posted at the website in the Lower Des Plaines section. We have an Our Work page, and then there's a page for reports and other resources. And so that report, as well as the MS4 activities report, are both posted there. The MS4 activities report I did send to all of our agency members to be included in your own annual reports that you submit, if you so choose to do that. But otherwise, all of both reports for these years, as well as the past years, are all available online if anybody ever needs them. I know I get questions throughout the year, particularly if IEPA is coming in and doing some sort of a audit, or as your permits are being reviewed. I get questions about these. So they're all posted and available. And then the last stuff, again, this is really review from our last meeting, because the way we work on a lot of our outreach materials, although we present them somewhat seasonally, they really a broad focus, and many of these topics could be used across many seasons, which is why when we redid the website, we redid how this was laid out. So at the bottom of any of the pages on the website, you can hit the outreach materials. Doesn't matter which one of these you hit because it takes you to the same page. So you end up with all the different topics that we have. And so the watershed outreach materials that we covered for spring and summer, again, can be applicable really any time now. But looking at a lot of the outdoor kind of growing side of things, the more we can get residents to incorporate native plants and thinking about how they're maintaining their own yards has an impact on stormwater, water quality. So we have a lot of information on that. Some kind of follow-up pieces from our garden refresh project from last year. And then we also picked up a couple of different topics this year specifically related to topics listed in the MS4 permit. So when we were reviewing that permit earlier this year when it was out for draft, we realized that there were a couple topics on there that we didn't have information on. So we're working on filling that gap. So we have some social media pieces and I think a newsletter article for each of these items. All the new blog posts are up there that you can copy and share or tag through your own social media. Again, expanding on green infrastructure, which was one of the things listed in the MS4 permit. So it's a big topic. So we kind of started out for this first go around with a more broad description of what green infrastructure is and the benefits of it. And then as we're going to continue to build within this topic and focus on specific green infrastructure topics. So like permeable paving, bioswales, things like that, but kind of felt like we needed some background information first. So that was the focus for that article. And then again, a number of new social media pieces to go along. We've got a lot more stuff around rain barrel resources, promotion for rain barrel program. If any of the communities are interested in hosting a rain barrel sale, Nancy and our staff can help you with that. We have a pretty plug and chug project with our program. We can post stuff on your website, coordinate the sale, and then have a pickup at your locations in town. So we've been working with a number of communities on that and are happy to help provide any assistance with that through the Conservation Foundation. We still have some few pet waste signs left available. I've been getting requests from a number of homeowner associations down in Will County, which has been great. Basically, anybody that has a trail, we're going to put the signs up and we provide the sign, you provide the post. We still have a few dispensers left. So if you know of homeowner associations within your community that might be interested in something like this, send them my way and we can continue to provide signs until they're all gone. And then just the general reminders of, we do have the Facebook page that Leah keeps up. So whether like the page, like the posts, share the posts, utilize these through your own social media, please do. And then the recordings for these meetings will be up on the YouTube channel of links to them from our website. And then just a reminder of the upcoming meetings. We have July 28th, September 22nd, and then a reminder on the December one is that it falls on Thanksgiving being the last Thursday, fourth Thursday of the month. So that one gets moved 1 week later because of Thanksgiving. So that's all I have. If anybody has any questions or other things that they want to share or discuss, please feel free. All right.
Thank you for all your work that you do for all of the towns. This is a tremendous group and everyone's doing a great job keeping us all going in the same direction.
Thanks, Nikki. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Back up into the very hot weather, unfortunately, but at least be nice to have a nice day off on Monday. So everybody enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
Have a good holiday. Thanks.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.